So it's Sam from XL Air Systems again, and today I just want to talk to you a little bit about electrical meters, testing for power, as well as doing some low voltage troubleshooting. A few tasks our service techs might ask you to do. We're just going to give you some video to follow along with that. So first, you don't need a high class or fancy meter. The one bonus you get out of a more expensive meter is you do get an amperage clamp, not always necessary. And typically for under 20 bucks, you can go to your local hardware store and get a basic digital meter. Each of these meters will have probes. We're going to use the more basic one today. These leads or probes are color coded and have a probe end and a plug end. If you follow me over to the meter, you're going to have typically 3 contacts here, or 3 plug ports. We have a common, which is almost always black, our voltage, ohms, and milliamp settings, and our large 10 amp setting. Typically you'll never use this left 10 amp setting, and you'll make sure that you go into one with the V. So we're going to plug our red plug in there and the black one into the common. Make sure they're pushed in good. And next you're going to go on to your dial face. So you're going to have typically 2 versions of V. V with a flat line and dots representing DC voltage, and V with the sideways S or squiggly line representing AC voltage. Some meters have an auto range and will show them both under each other or the same symbol, in which case you won't have to select or choose it. You want to go as close to voltage range as you're going to test. So we're going to test input power first, and the model we're testing today is at 240 volts. 200 volts, not quite enough. 300 volts is our closest selection. So to do that, take your 2 probes and your meter, place your meter where you can read it, and you're going to touch your line 1 to line 2 terminals on the main power contactor. That is the place where your main power wire is attached to. So we're going to simply take 1 probe, color does not matter with the AC voltage. You're going to touch 1 to the set screw, being careful not to touch anything else. And you're going to take your second probe and touch it to the second screw. Right now we're reading 0 volts because the power is off to this unit. I'm going to turn the power on and repeat the process. With our breaker back on and our unit should be supplied with power now. Purpose of the meter, we're going to check. So again, we're at the 300 volt range on this meter. I'm going to take one of your 2 probes. You're going to carefully touch it to 1 set screw on line 1. Second probe onto line 2. All right, so if you look at the screen, you're going to see we have 205 volts. Okay, the contactor we are checking here is what's called a 3-phase contactor, as you have 3 lines of power. Checking line 1 and line 2 is fine on a single phase unit, but we want to make sure that we don't have a fuse or a breaker or a broken wire somewhere. So we're going to do as many combinations as possible. So we checked line 1 to line 2. We're reading 205 volts. We're going to leave red probe on line 1 and touch line 3, 204 volts. Okay, so for our final combination, we're going to remove both probes. I'm going to attach red to line 2 and our black one to line 3, 205 volts. So we know that all 3 legs have power. Traditionally, a lot of people will touch a single probe to line 1 and another one to a screw or another form of ground, showing you that you have half of your voltage at 115 volts. This can sometimes get you in trouble because we do have what's called backfeeding here. So even though we may have lost a leg, you still will show 115 volts on each line. What you're looking for is between 187 and 256 volts AC from line to line in all 3 combinations. So we just successfully tested voltage input to this unit. We know the power is supplied to it. If we are troubleshooting things like a compressor not functioning or a fan, what we want to check next is that our contactor is operational. So we're going to do the exact same test, but on the T side or terminal side. So it's the bottom side of this contactor. So again, you're going to use your two probes. You're going to make sure your voltage range is more than your rated voltage. And you're going to check T1 to T2. 0 volts. Again, all three combinations. T1 to T3. 0 volts. T2 to T3. 0 volts. So this contactor is either failed or is not being told to engage. So we know this one's not being told to engage as we don't have a thermostat attached or a call for cooling. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn the system on and we're going to check this contactor again. Alright, so now we have a call for cooling. I can visually see the plunger on this contactor has pulled in. So now I'm going to check again for voltage between the T1, T2, and T3 combinations. We're going to take our meter, place one onto T1, the other onto T2. And now 205 volts, again T1 to T3, 205 volts, and our last combination of T2 to T3, which we have 206 volts. Small voltage fluctuations are normal and it will depend on your power supply and building. This is showing us our contactor is engaged and we do have power coming out the other side. Alright, next we're going to use the meter to check our low voltage connections and supply. So on your meter face, you're going to use voltage in AC and we're going to get as close to our low voltage as possible. In this unit, it's between 18 and 32 volts AC. So our closest without going under is 200 volts. Place that somewhere where you can see. And you're going to take your meter probes. First we're going to check is the voltage between C and R, or common and R. We're going to take our probes and you're going to press it into one of the two set screws, one for C, one for R, and we're reading 23.2 volts. So again, anything between 18 to 32 volts AC is acceptable here, and that proves that we do have low voltage power. Knowing now that we have 24 volts AC supplied to this unit, we can then further investigate if we have a call for fan, cooling, or dehumidification by simply using the common C terminal and G for fan, Y for compressor, or O for dehumidification. So I've left the red probe on the C terminal as I've switched between my three options. With this small bit of information, I'm hopeful that everyone will be out there successful, able to troubleshoot, have a little better understanding of a simple multimeter. Definitely takes a lot of the guesswork out and will hopefully save you from throwing money at something or replacing parts that don't need to be.